Welcome, everyone. Good morning. My name is Xiomara Rodriguez, and I am the Communications Director for Discover Puerto Rico. Thank you for joining us today as we provide our industry update. On this webinar, Discover Puerto Rico's executive leadership team will walk you through information and updates in the areas of research, marketing, and sales, as well as the strategies we have developed in response to our current situation and as we look ahead. Before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. Today's industry update will be translated simultaneously into Spanish. The slides used are available in Spanish on our industry portal, puertoricodmo.com/industry. So you can download the presentation and follow along. In addition, this webinar is being recorded, and later this week, you will receive a link to the recording so you can replay at your convenience. La presentación del día de hoy tendrá subtítulos o closed captions en español. Si usted desea activar la función de subtítulos en español, oprima en el botón etiquetado Closed Captions en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Elija la opción que dice Show Subtitles para ver los subtítulos en español. Si desean ver el tracto completo de la traducción, pueden seleccionar la función que dice View Full Transcript. La presentación que utilizaremos el día de hoy está disponible en español y puede ser descargada desde nuestro portal de la industria, puertoricodmo.com/industry. En adición, el seminario web del día de hoy está siendo grabado y más tarde esta semana recibirán un enlace con la grabación del mismo para que puedan repasar el contenido a su conveniencia. After the presentation, we will have time for a Q&A, but feel free to send your questions as we go. You can do so by using the Q&A feature, which is the bubble labeled Q&A at the bottom of your screen. During today's industry update, you'll hear from our CEO, Brad Dean, Research and Analytics Director, Alicia Valentine, Chief Marketing Officer, Leah Chandler, and Chief Sales Officer, Ed Carey. Now to get things started, I'll leave you with Discover Puerto Rico CEO, Mr. Brad Dean.
Saludos from your DMO, Discover Puerto Rico. I hope you, your loved ones, and your work team are safe and healthy. Between tropical storms, earthquakes, and COVID-19, 2020 is a year none of us will ever forget. The COVID pandemic has devastated our industry in ways none of us could have anticipated. Yet here we are, 6 months into the worst crisis we've ever faced. One thing I have grown to appreciate in recent months is the way in which local businesses have reacted, responded, and pivoted despite a year of never-ending challenges. Your resiliency and determination are admirable and will be the key to our island's economic recovery. Like you, we are eager to reopen tourism to off-island visitors and resume promoting and selling Puerto Rico. For that reason, we are very eager to hear the upcoming announcement by Governor Vasquez, which we anticipate will adjust the current executive order. And as we have done throughout the past several weeks and months, we will react, respond, and pivot in accordance with whatever changes are made. As we discussed at our last industry update, when the island's reopening plans were halted due to increasing COVID case counts, we pulled back on our paid promotional plans and quickly shifted our messaging to help the island win the battle against COVID. But none of us can ignore the economic battle which lies ahead, one we are committed to winning with you and for you. While tourism has been slowed by the current restrictions in place, we continue to operate in accordance with our COVID Recovery Action Plan and pay very close attention to industry research, making certain our decisions are informed by timely intelligence and analysis. We've sought to maintain top-of-mind awareness with likely travelers, planners, and travel advisors using a variety of tactics, including virtual FAMs, virtual sales meetings, one-on-one sales presentations, and online trade shows. We've continually updated our owned marketing channels with relevant, timely information while weaving in inspirational content to remind travelers of what awaits them when they are able to visit. And we've continued to communicate regularly with media and influencers, keeping them abreast of the island's status, so that when tourism reopens to off-island visitors, they'll be prepared to help us tell the world and generate much needed positive publicity. And we're encouraged that despite the current restrictions in place, consumers and planners remain interested in Puerto Rico. Research confirms that travelers are eager to resume traveling, but one impediment is the confusion surrounding travel restrictions and protocols. So we recognize that we must strive to make the travel process clear, manageable, and hassle-free. Add to that the most recent brand research, which confirms that our tourism brand strength has improved considerably over the past 2 years, with familiarity and desirability on the rise. This is very good news as we look to the future. Until our island is prepared to receive off-island visitors again, we will continue to carefully communicate the current situation, the guidelines, and the travel restrictions in place so our future visitors know what to expect and can plan accordingly. But we also recognize that you and other businesses are facing challenging circumstances, which are frustrating and frankly quite frightening. And at Discover Puerto Rico, we must do all we can to help you put people back to work as soon as it's possible to do so. In normal times, we make investment choices and set our priorities based upon what will have the greatest overall impact to our industry and our island, which oftentimes is guided by a return on investment analysis. But as we look to lead this recovery, we are also prioritizing those actions and strategies that will have the quickest impact. We know that you don't just need help, you need help right away. So when the time is right to resume promotion of tourism, we will act swiftly and aggressively to restart the tourism engine as quickly as possible. For us, recovery does not end with an announcement of reopening tourism to off-island visitors, nor does it end with a COVID vaccine. For Discover Puerto Rico, recovery does not end until occupancy rates are high, planes are full, and restaurants and attractions are busy again. We remain committed to making that a reality, hopefully soon. In the meantime, I applaud all you are doing to protect your business and your employees, and know that better days lie ahead for all of us. Together, we will write another amazing comeback story. Today, you'll hear from our team on the current status of the industry and the trends we're seeing, along with an update of what our marketing, communications, and sales teams are doing to prepare for the recovery. It's now my pleasure to turn the presentation over to Alicia Valentine, our Director of Research and Analytics.
Thank you, Brad. So much of the research that is available to us is based on reaching consumers with a marketing message that encourages visitation. But of course, that's not where we are right now. When we've looked at hotel occupancy in past updates, we've compared where Puerto Rico is against the rest of the US. And given our current situation, it's just not a very fair comparison. And while the competitive position is certainly relevant, I have recently embraced one of author and psychologist Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. With that, we can not only evaluate against where Puerto Rico was in 2019, when we had record-breaking visitation, but we can see how reopening in mid-July, quickly followed by a rollback, impacted the island. Before the rollback of opening, we were seeing week-over-week leisure occupancy pickups of more than 30%. Since that time, there have continued to be cancellations for the upcoming week and a continuing slowdown of future bookings in both hotels and rentals. And when we've looked at this year-over-year forecast in previous updates, we've seen glimpses of optimism, especially for the potential for October's performance. However, with an uncertain opening and consumers unclear about protocols once they do arrive, the door for a potential fall rebound is quickly closing. But there's a striking difference between the year-over-year hotel and rental booking pace. During the pandemic, rentals have fared considerably better than hotels worldwide. And the anticipated loss in the hotel market we're seeing is very much in line with the rest of the competitive set. This top table shows overall year-over-year occupancy changes. And while we are faring a bit worse than Aruba, bookings are outpacing the Bahamas. And we know that both the supply and demand for rentals on the island has grown dramatically in the past 2 years. However, the year-over-year change we're seeing in the rental market is very unusual. No other destination in the competitive set shown here, or the 7 others that in the Caribbean we monitor, are seeing such nominal losses from 2019. And we know that the airlines are constantly making changes to future schedules based on anticipated demand. Prior to the island's closure on July 16th, airlines had been adding seat capacity from Discover Puerto Rico's target markets. And those seats were cut after the rollback of opening. That airlines are adding seats back into the market before the end of the calendar year is a strong signal that they anticipate demand to Puerto Rico. With these changes, the airlines are clearly communicating about optimism about Puerto Rico in the fourth quarter. Airlines had planned significant increases in capacity to the island based on 2019's record visitation. So even though seats were cut following the executive order halting travel, there had been such a significant planned increase that total capacity is off only 2% from the fourth quarter of 2019. The U.S. Travel Association publishes weekly visitor spending losses due to COVID-19, breaking down those losses by geography, including Puerto Rico. Analysis from the industry's leading economists at Tourism Economics shows that between the first week of March and the week of August 15th, the U.S. had lost $340.5 billion in visitor spending. And while this tourism accounts for about 25% of the total financial losses, the industry has been the hardest hit in terms of job losses, with 40% coming from the tourism sector. And when we consider losses by state and territory, Puerto Rico has lost over $1.75 billion in direct visitor spending, more than 13 other U.S. states. Local economists have said that Puerto Rico's economy has lost about $5 to $10 billion due to COVID-19. And given additional economic impacts from the lost visitor spending, it's estimated that the total economic impact of COVID-19 to the tourism sector to date is about $2.5 billion. Puerto Rico's initial opening in mid-July coincided with the height of concern amid spiking cases in the U.S. However, perceptions of travel have been improving in the past month. Our data partners have been tracking consumer sentiment surrounding travel since early March, and more consumers than ever are now saying that they are ready to travel. However, there's confusion on what restrictions and protocols are in place. Consumers are signaling that unclear requirements are more of a deterrent to travel than feeling unsafe. Consumers are ready to travel. Demand for our product is strong, and the airlines are signaling confidence in Puerto Rico. We just need to be able to message clearly when and how the island is ready to welcome visitors. So up next, Discover Puerto Rico's Chief Marketing Officer, Leah Chandler, will tell us how we're ready to do just that.
Thank you, Alicia. When we scheduled our September industry update, we had no way of knowing that the current executive order would expire shortly after our webinar. That said, today we remain in phase 2 of our recovery plan. Discover Puerto Rico's core marketing activities designed to drive visitation to the island are still paused. We continue working with Aerostar to amplify the current procedures and health and safety measures at the airport, and are evolving our messaging to reach consumers even earlier in the planning and travel funnel, ensuring all requirements are met prior to their arrival in Puerto Rico. Given direct-to-consumer marketing activities are on hold, communications efforts remain critical. We've been encouraging essential travel only, which drove early, immediate coverage. Even though the reopening date for inbound tourism has been postponed, there are still strong opportunities to keep potential travelers engaged without encouraging immediate visitation. Like our virtual vacations from earlier in the year, we're developing and executing a series of creative, newsworthy content to keep the destination top of mind, highlight unique experiences, and support local businesses who have been impacted by the pandemic. To achieve this, we have to uncover an emotional anchor that will break through with the media and at the same time drive a unique story that's ownable to Puerto Rico. Our priority is to support you and your business by forming strategic partnerships that will create buzz for the destination. This concept, still in development, is a partnership with an e-commerce website like Etsy, one of the top online marketplaces in the world, to create the first ever Destination Spotlight homepage where on-island partners will have a chance to feature and sell their goods. Partnering with a company like Etsy with an established platform for an activation like this would elevate and expose the destination to a larger and more diverse audience. It would be a win for Etsy, as it would be the first time they're spotlighting a destination, and a win for our island as we're providing local small businesses heavily impacted by the pandemic with significant exposure. We would invite local small businesses to participate and ensure they're set up correctly on the platform, taking photographs of their products if needed, and enhancing descriptions and information. We would pitch this to top-tier media to amplify our efforts, since it would be a first-time type of partnership. In parallel with this creative thinking, we are continuing tried and true tactics. Our partners at Ketchum have continued developing and updating the COVID-19 specific messaging that is housed on our website, including the travel advisory, the consumer Q&A, and MICE materials. We're focusing our efforts to show up in a positive light in articles that will inspire and help travelers dream about a future trip to Puerto Rico. This includes the pursuit of evergreen stories. These primarily focus on lifestyle media outlets where we can highlight the beauty of Puerto Rico and keep the destination top of mind when people begin to make their travel plans in the coming months and into the new year. While things like executive orders may impact this timeline, Ketchum has outlined moments to leverage throughout the end of the year. Topics such as Hispanic Heritage Month and National Coffee Day will be pursued proactively to garner coverage that benefits the destination, given what we're currently permitted to promote. In addition to these story angles, we're proactively and reactively pitching evergreen topics like sustainability and culture, etc., as well as stories for MICE-specific media. Here you'll see the sample pitch angles that we've outlined given the time of year. And here's a sample of some of the hits Ketchum has secured for the destination recently. In the past 6 months, our creative messaging continues to evolve to meet the changing circumstances. As we pivoted away from beautiful scenic images designed to lure visitors to the island, we replaced them with messages meant to detract visitation. The visuals that accompany these messages are simple, educational, and informative. This messaging has certainly helped slow the arrival of visitors. Data from Smith Travel Research shows that hotel demand for the week ending August 29th fell 46.5% from 6 weeks earlier, while AirDNA reports that independent rental bookings declined 45% for the same period. But from a brand health standpoint, this messaging is not sustainable for an extended period of time. While our social messaging was safety-only graphics, engagement dropped significantly. We have to carefully balance the assets of the island, which our followers expect and look forward to. We must be clear that the island is not open, but we can remind them of the beauty of the island so that we will be included in their consideration set once we again open for inbound tourism. Beginning August 19th, we resurfaced our all in good time messaging to blend with health and safety messaging. We produced stunning assets for this campaign at the onset of COVID. Some of those weren't amplified to their fullest potential, which we're relaunching, and new assets will likely be created depending on the length of time the island remains closed. Since this transition just a couple of weeks ago, we've already seen results start to move in a positive direction. Page reach is up 32%, impressions are up 30%, page views are up 8%, interactions are down 13% from 72%, and post reactions are up 14%. While at this time we can't market with traditional messaging encouraging visits to the island, we're developing new content that educates potential visitors about the island in an entertaining way, sparking inspiration and trip ideas for the future. Developed and produced by Discover Puerto Rico's internal team, we're going to launch a series of hosted educational video series that's focused on language and sound. Research and insights show that COVID-19 restrictions ignited desires for people to learn a new skill, pursue new hobbies, and try new activities. In this fresh new series, our audience will learn phrases and words used by Puerto Ricans for specific activities like surfing, coffee drinking, bird watching, and other popular activities throughout the island. Our food, language, wildlife, and music are full of sounds uniquely Puerto Rican. Discover Puerto Rico hosts will take viewers on a journey to discover unique sounds and words to make their trip to Puerto Rico complete. Together with locals, they'll reveal the meaning behind words and how to properly use them, experiencing the true sounds of our island. This series will launch in early October. Media is a strong lever for us to pull, whether we're attracting visitors or detracting them. The majority of our media investment has been paused. Current active placements focus on educating consumers on guidelines and restrictions. These low-level investments include SEM and paid social, which drive to the travel advisory. When planning to re-enter the media marketplace as restrictions begin to lift, it's going to be critical that we search for travelers who profile as responsible and conscientious, those who are willing to follow local rules and give consideration to the destination they're visiting. We're also working on a CARES Act media plan that further educates travelers on health and safety measures in place when arriving on the island. This plan is, of course, dependent on securing these funds. Research shows that hygiene and cleanliness are synonymous with safety and comfort, with 93% saying they feel safe or more comfortable visiting a destination they know is taking precautions concerning hygiene and cleanliness. In compliance with receiving CARES Act funds, we will continue educating travelers on the protocols in place on the island. We will focus on a safe traveler segment using precise targeting based on users' behavior, interest, keyword indicators, and content that they've previously consumed. You have hopefully already seen that Discover Puerto Rico's all-new industry portal is now live. Designed specifically with the island's tourism industry with a focus on transparency, this all-new website provides valuable resources like digital marketing tools, a media vault with high-quality images of the destination, up-to-date research, snapshots of our media coverage, and more. The portal includes competitively sensitive information and research data, so not all content is open to the public. To access the full site, please be sure to register and request an account. The travel advisory on discoverpuertorico.com continues to serve as our main source of information to educate consumers on the restrictions in place on the island. Since launching the advisory on March 9th, the page has had nearly 1 million page views and an average time spent on the page of 8 minutes and 9 seconds. This accounts for 40% of traffic to the site since it launched. There have been nearly 760,000 entrances to the site through the travel advisory, which is credit to the strong SEO that's on the page. We also continue to update the health and safety landing pages with the most up-to-date information for both leisure, travelers, and MICE. Since launching in June, the page has had nearly 80,000 page views and an average time spent on the page of 3 minutes and 49 seconds. Look for this information to be updated shortly after we receive guidance on updated measures that will be put in place with the forthcoming executive order. Let's take a quick look at our MICE marketing efforts. Meeting planners definitely need our partnership right now. One of the ways we can assist them is by providing engaging and unique content for their virtual meetings. We are developing 3 relaxation videos featuring meditation and yoga with a beautiful Puerto Rico backdrop. By providing these tools, not only are we being great partners and meeting planners where they are, but we're also keeping Puerto Rico top of mind for when their live meetings begin again. As we continue to monitor meeting planner sentiment, it's evident that potential customers want to see visuals of how our hotels and venues are setting up for groups in this new environment. To assist, we'd like to push out relevant images and details on our meeting's social channels. We're asking hotel partners to send us images that we can use for this purpose. And finally, our team is going to be attending the Live Connect Marketplace event in October. This will be our first major live event since March, and we're looking forward to joining our industry colleagues to move live meetings forward and book meetings in 2021 and beyond. For a look at activity from our sales and services teams, I now turn the presentation over to our Chief Sales Officer, Ed Carey.
Thank you, Leah, and good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. And a special thanks to our Customer Advisory Board members who are joining us this morning and throughout the day to help us continue to refine our strategy. So at the end of August, our destination services team and several hotel partners put together our first virtual destination experience. And this particular fam trip focused on the Convention Center District, El Distrito, and the surrounding hotels. We attracted 120 meeting planners who met with 5 of our hoteliers to learn why Puerto Rico would be a good choice for their upcoming events and how we plan to keep their attendees safe. And of course, we wanted to also provide them with education and resources to create memorable experiences. So we provided a mix of destination knowledge, news on current safety protocols, and individual property presentations. And to make it fun, we included live polling, a roulette wheel with winners receiving hotel stays, and a bomba performance to close it out. Customer comments have been extremely positive. Our next event occurs this afternoon at 4 p.m. and we're looking at extending additional dates. So in the first 2 months of this fiscal year, our sales team has hosted or engaged in nearly 50 webinars, presentations, and virtual trade shows. 10 of our hotel partners have participated in our commission programs with our key strategic partners. And though the volume of leads is way below last year, we're still seeing movement in the marketplace. Since the crisis began, we have seen over 82,000 rooms requested and have confirmed nearly 17,000 rooms for nearly $16 million in economic impact. And on the leisure side, we had some very important activations that will certainly pay off when restrictions are lifted. Discover Puerto Rico was named as the American Society of Travel Advisors Destination Partner of the Year and played a significant role in the organization's annual meeting. Our marketing, media, and sales teams worked together to deliver educational sessions, man the virtual booth, host a social hour for the attendees, and deliver stage time for Brad and myself at the opening and closing sessions. And ultimately, in the months of July and August, we were able to engage with over 2,000 advisors. Our new deals page has performed very well. 61 hotels are currently participating. And in the month of July, we saw nearly 6,000 page views with an average engagement of roughly 1.5 minutes. And we recommend that you reach out to us if you'd like to be included. So moving on into September and October, we're keeping up with the major organizations, but we're also peeling off a bit to target certain market segments that we know will have to book live meetings in 2021, including the pharma, financial, insurance, and incentive markets that we believe may recover more quickly than others. And as we get into October, the events begin to move back to live events, and we will be involved, including a big presence, as Leah mentioned, with Connect in Las Vegas. And we will continue to stay in front of the right travel advisors as our opening gets closer. We hear every single day from travel advisors who are anxious to begin selling the island and travel here themselves. They're just waiting for the restrictions to be lifted. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Xiomar Rodriguez.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you to our executive leadership team for providing such great information and insight. We have some questions on the Q&A box, and we want to answer as many questions as we can in the time we have left. Before we get started, I want to let you know that we will not be able to offer the translation feature during the Q&A session. So this portion will be in English only. Also, and as I mentioned earlier, the webinar is being recorded. So later this week, you will receive a link to the recording so you can replay it at your convenience or share it with a colleague who were not able to attend today. My email, it's also on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to me if after the webinar you have questions or need any additional information. I will be happy to assist you. A nuestros amigos que están utilizando el servicio de traducción, no vamos a poder ofrecer la función de subtítulos en esta sección, así que la misma será solamente en inglés. También, como mencioné antes, este seminario web está siendo grabado y más tarde en esta semana le haremos llegar el enlace con la grabación para que puedan repasar el contenido a su conveniencia o compartirlo con algún colega que no haya podido estar presente el día de hoy. En pantalla están viendo mi correo electrónico, pueden anotarlo y si al finalizar este seminario web tienen dudas, preguntas o necesitan alguna información adicional, pueden comunicarse conmigo a través del mismo. Now let's get started with our questions here. Leah, I have a question here that I believe it could be for you. Is Discover Puerto Rico thinking about a mobile app?
So that's a good question, and we've received that question before. Right now, our website, discoverpuertorico.com, is 100% mobile optimized. It was actually built with mobile in mind. So we have a completely functioning site from a mobile experience standpoint. Apps are typically something that are sort of fly by night and generally don't have a lot of staying power. In terms of destination usage, you see other apps like Yelp or TripAdvisor that came along much earlier in the mobile app scene. And of course, all of the booking apps like Expedia and Hotels.com. Destinations really can't compete with those types of apps. And so we don't try to. The best opportunity for us is just to make sure that the content that is available through our general website is optimized for mobile, which ours certainly is. So short answer is no.
Thank you, Leah. This question could be for Brad and Leah as well. Are you in contact with other islands such as British Virgin Islands or US Virgin Islands or maybe the Dominican Republic to learn about the things that they have gone through? They have gone through several shutdowns. They had to reopen again. So are we speaking with any of these other destinations to kind of take a page from their book on what they have done?
Indeed, we are. In fact, I think I've communicated more with our colleagues and peers on other islands more in the past 6 months than perhaps prior to COVID, in part because of what everybody's working on. You know, if you think about it, we're not all in the same boat, but we are all in the same storm. So we're learning from them, they're learning from us. Not only the other islands in the Caribbean, we're also maintaining close contact with our colleagues in Hawaii and Alaska, who also face very similar circumstances. And you may have noticed in some of our previous presentations, we're also tracking the status of protocols and regulations in the various islands and trying to learn from them. So our focus obviously is exclusively on Puerto Rico, and we will continue to do everything we can to position Puerto Rico for a quick recovery, but we're certainly staying in close communication and keeping an eye on all of our competitors and peers to watch and learn from them as well.
Thank you, Brad. Do we have any information about when cruising will resume on the island?
You know, the cruise industry is obviously facing some unique challenges that position them for a longer recovery period. Having said that, you're already beginning to notice some of the major players are announcing changes in their schedules going forward. Now, this has been happening for the last couple of months. So like the rest of us, they're in a constant mode of reassessing and realigning. What we're hearing is that the cruise industry still is certainly looking favorably towards a return to Puerto Rico. The challenge for them is multi-based. Number one, the island has to be ready to welcome and receive visitors back. Secondly, they've got to be able to adhere to the many new standards that have been put in place, and probably more coming for them. And then last but certainly not least, the demand has to be there. Interestingly enough, there is more demand for cruising coming out of COVID than some might have anticipated early on. But no doubt the cruise industry faces a long climb back like the rest of the industry. So as far as specific dates, it's really going to depend first and foremost on when we're ready and when the island's ready and when the cruise lines are ready. And also, obviously, they've got to adhere to the federal restrictions. But hopefully, we're looking at a notable reentry in the later part of this year or 2021.
Thank you, Brad. Alicia, I think this question would be for you. What is the perception of the tourists in regards to how they see Puerto Rico handling COVID? And do you think they will be eager to travel during the winter season, which is our high season here?
So hopefully you're signed up to receive our weekly communication. In addition to updates from Discover Puerto Rico, we are putting out specific research-based information as well. And in this week's message, you'll find much of the perception issues, and certainly we're able to include some questions specifically related to Puerto Rico. And we've seen in the past 4 months or so, since we've not been able to have a marketing message, that interest in the island and not being front and center is waning. And so being able to really be proactive and having that messaging out there is very important. But we've taken a look specifically at not just when consumers are willing to travel, because obviously to get to Puerto Rico, our main markets in the US need to be willing to get on a plane. And we saw that this week, I think it was 42% of US consumers are willing to travel before the end of our high season next spring. So certainly a significant market for us to be able to reach. And we look every week at who those consumers are that are willing to travel, not only where they are in terms of geography, but also specific demographics, as we're looking to target those consumers, and also overlaying that with what airlift looks like in that constantly changing landscape.
Thank you, Alicia. Brad, are Discover Puerto Rico, PRTC, and the Health Department working together to improve the current system and messaging that we have in regards to arrival protocols, requirements for tourists to get here, in order to achieve a little bit of continuity on what is being communicated?
We are, in fact, we've been working closely with PRTC and Aerostar throughout this COVID crisis to keep our information up and provide timely updates and relevant information to all travelers, both those who may be coming soon. But bear in mind, a lot of the travelers and planners that we speak to are planning months or years out. So we want to make sure that we're providing the most relevant, accurate information for everybody based on their needs. We've also worked in recent weeks with the Department of Health to adapt not only to the requirements that have been posted through the executive order, but anticipating some of the changes. And there's been an active effort led by Foundation of Puerto Rico to design and implement a biological barrier. And those discussions have also included Discover Puerto Rico, the tourism company, and the Department of Health. Suffice to say that progress has been made, but we still have a long way to go before we're optimally communicating this, because this is constantly changing. So we have to continue to look for ways to improve and expand and enhance our ability to communicate to travelers. But suffice it to say, there's a regular ongoing flow of information, bearing in mind our role is to be the island's messenger off island, but to make sure that we're closely aligned with the practices, the procedures, the protocols, and the communications that organizations like Aerostar, the tourism company, the Department of Health handle at the local level.
Thank you, Brad. I believe we have one more question here. How do you see what is happening with Cancun with an immense increase of flights, many from the US? How do you see that affecting us?
Well, I think, going back to the research that Alicia shared, not only in this industry update and previous industry updates as well, all of which I think are available via our industry portal, there's clearly a substantial amount of demand of travelers who want to get away for a quick vacation. And while the numbers don't match what we would have seen pre-COVID, suffice to say that people are looking for destinations where they can get out and enjoy wide open spaces and beautiful scenery, and of course the beaches, and obviously Puerto Rico competes very well for that. There's also a substantial amount of travel that would have gone to Europe or South America that, because of the restrictions on travel now, staying closer to the United States. And so for us in Puerto Rico, there's certainly an opportunity to capture some of that. Cancun obviously has gotten out very quickly and has seen increases, and it's no surprise that the airlines have adapted their capacity accordingly. And so the chart that Alicia shared earlier shows the airlines are, if not bullish, at least optimistic for recovery in Puerto Rico, as they have scheduled a substantial amount of seats even later this year, is a good sign. The challenge for us is we have to be ready to receive those visitors. So in terms of how it affects us, my view has been and continues to be that Puerto Rico is a premier leisure and business destination. I think we compete very favorably with destinations like Cancun. But first and foremost, we have to win this battle against COVID, and all of us, and this includes our partners in the public sector as well, have to recognize that the business community cannot continue to sustain losses like we've seen in recent weeks and months. We have to move forward on reopening tourism to off-island visitors. Once we can tell visitors that we're ready to receive them, even with the right protocols and procedures in place, and once the testing requirement is reasonable, that a visitor can get a COVID test in time, I have full confidence that our team's ready, able, and eager, in fact, to reignite the tourism engine. And if you go back just a few weeks ago, as we were preparing to reopen to off-island visitors in the middle of July, there were some very encouraging signs of visitors that were coming not only through the GDS system, but also through some of the new connections we've made with travel advisors. We have more travel advisors enrolled in our travel expert program today than ever before. And as well with the marketing team and some of the creative that we've been able to release, we've been able to see a steady growth. And in July, we were seeing a buildup that we felt would have led to not a full recovery, but certainly of substantial steps forward in terms of recovery. So that's a long answer to a short question. The short answer is we compete well, but first and foremost, we've got to win this battle against COVID. We've got to keep the curve flattened. We've got to get reopened. And then we're going to aggressively launch our recovery plan into phase 3 so that we can get the visitors coming back and put people back to work on our island as soon as possible.
I have another question for you, Brad. Is the DMO restricted by the VITA on promotion of the political cycle or exempted?
That's a great question, and I got to give a lot of kudos here to local hoteliers and the Puerto Rico Hotel and Tourism Association that were visionary and savvy in lobbying for that, for the creation of the DMO. So because of those efforts and too many people to name, but a lot of key leaders in the hotel community as well, PRHTA, that was one of the talking points and one of the reasons why the DMO was created. So the short answer and the good answer is we are exempted from that. And that's incredibly important in this time as you think about the possibility of, even though we don't have a lot of promotional funding to invest right now, the possibility of directing CARES Act funding or CDBG funding or other sources to promotion, that exemption may be what enables the DMO to accomplish what wouldn't have otherwise been accomplished. So we are exempted, and the credit for that goes to local hoteliers and the Puerto Rico Hotel and Tourism Association that made that possible.
Thank you, Brad. Leah, I have a question for you. We are getting asked about this new trend that we're seeing with some destinations about remote workers, and people may be taking time and coming to a destination since they're working remotely and spending some time here. Would this be something relevant to Puerto Rico or something that we're interested in exploring?
Absolutely. It is certainly something we are exploring right now. And in fact, we're working with our sister organization, Invest Puerto Rico, to investigate this opportunity and fully take advantage of it. We're certainly seeing other Caribbean islands who are doing similar programs, and even individual properties and resorts in places like Jamaica are starting to announce promotions with minimum 4-week stays and amenities that people who are short-term living in those properties would want available, like laundry service and things like health classes and exercise classes. So I certainly think it's an opportunity for Puerto Rico. We have all of the assets here to be able to offer that type of experience. And I think working with our partners at Invest Puerto Rico, we're going to be able to come up with a solid program in the near future.
Thank you, Leah. Well, that's all the questions that we have for today. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.